Hello, everybody. Good evening and welcome to day three. Finally, we are wrapping up this session. To everyone who made this possible, every single person at Sage and to God Consult, we saying a big thank you. We all are very grateful for choosing to spend your time with us. You know how the adage goes, time is money, and you have chosen to spend time with us. We are very grateful for that, and we do not take it for granted. So before we get into today's session, I will just do a brief recap of the first 2 days so that those who are joining in for the first time today will have a sense of what has been discussed. So for day one, we spoke about the woman and her work, and we went through a series of exercises. We had the time of life exercise that helps to situate where we are on our various journeys of life, and to also help us, have a sense of understanding of what season of life we are. We had the six life exercise that helped us define our individual definitions of success. And then we also had the time of life, sorry, I beg your pardon, the balance wheel exercise, the wheel of life exercise. And that was to help us develop strategies and methodologies to help us evolve into the eight-star woman. So on day one, we conducted a series of exercises, and for those who have not done those exercises, I I plead with you to please go back to the first recording, day one, and go through the exercise. It's going to really help your journey. It's going to bring you a lot of clarity. That much I can tell you because I also did the exercise myself, and I've also been in groups where we all conducted the exercises together. And believe me, it comes with a sense of clarity and gives you some kind of direction. um, so that was all for day one. For day two, we spoke about the woman and her family. Well, we answered two real time questions, two real life scenarios. We spoke about how work life balance, um, to attain work life balance as a woman, the first thing is to find purpose, to develop that anchor, to set that compass, because it's from that foundation you'll be able to operate. So, as a woman, if you've not found purpose, it becomes difficult to have work life balance because work life balance cannot be achieved on its own. For every balance, you don't just put the balance there and expect it to work. The balance is always anchored on a pivot, right? It's always anchored on something. So the something that work-life balance is anchored on is purpose. So when purpose is there, it then becomes easy to find that journey. We also saw how the AHA system of thought helps in um, experiencing work-life balance. We did the time management exercise. By now, I expect that everyone who was present yesterday would have completed the time management exercise because um, two outcomes are to be expected from that exercise. You'll either find that you're wasting time, or you're going to find that you are taking on more than you can handle. So if it's the former where you are wasting time, it becomes easy for you to make adjustments. So if you find out that during work hours you are spending more time gisting with your friend or spending more time on social media, you already know that, okay, how about I put my phone on silent between now and 1 p.m. And then when I go on break, lunch break at 1 p.m., I can then check out all of my social media handles just with my friends, so that your pocket of time meant for creativity will not be affected or compromised. And then if it's that you're taking on more than you can handle, the obvious answer to that is to begin to delegate. You have to learn the art of delegation so that it can free up time for you at work and at home. Because when the home is not solid enough, when there's problems at home, it ultimately affects productivity at work. And then when there's problem at work, it affects the home because you begin to transfer aggression to your husband, to your children, And when that's happening and they are lashing back out at you, when you get back to work again, you find that you're struggling with work because you're thinking of some of the hurtful things that have been said the day before, and then it becomes a very negative and vicious cycle, right? So that's what that time management exercise will do. We also spoke about the role of the woman at home, and we talked about the fact that it is true that women are called the nurturers, especially by the standards of society. However, scientifically, biologically, physiologically, both men and women express compassion in the same way. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Both men and women have are anatomically express compassion in the same way. So, by virtue of the structure of the body, the structure of the nerves, the structure of the brain, the limbic system, men and women um, express compassion the same way. The same places are triggered in both men and women. The only difference is that there is some sort of conditioning, right? And so conditioning then affects the output. It affects how men and women respond to nurturing, to compassion, to kindness, right? And so I mentioned that um, women should not just take on the bulk of wanting to build a family. Involve your husband as well. You'll be surprised that they also want to be involved, but because they also have been indoctrinated into a system that says it's the woman that's supposed to do this, they back out. But when you include them, you find that there's some sort of partnership going on. And that was all for day two. So for day three, we're going to be talking about the woman and her relationships. Let me begin sharing screen. Hope I can see. Okay, loading. Okay, please let me know when you can see my screen. Okay, can you see my screen? Can anyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Okay, so today
Yes,
day
I
three.
can.
Thank you so much. So today, day three, we'll be looking at the woman and her relationship, and this is a course outline for today. Today, we're going to talk about the parent-child relationship. We're going to talk about the husband-wife relationship. We're going to talk about managing a misogynistic boss, and we are going to talk about dealing with a toxic colleague. And our methodology for today is tripartite in nature. Um, I'm going to bring up the problem. I'm going to show you a response, and our response is constant for the purpose of this conversation. And then we're going to talk about the changes we intend to see and how to carry it out. So this will be the methodology we're going to use today in conversing. So the first, the parent-child relationship. I had quite a number of questions to ask regarding this. I got quite a number of questions, so I just had to choose one, and hopefully the answers from this one can, we can it can help answer other questions. And if at the end of today the questions have not been answered, we are going to tackle it. Very important because that's one of the most important things for this coaching program for me. It's for everyone to find answers to burning questions. Um, yeah, the link to the course that was put on the group yesterday and that was also sent via mails, you're also going to get quite a lot of questions, quite a lot of answers and clarity, especially for parents who have adolescent children. That course is very, very much designed for you. So this is the first question. the line teenager. That's what I titled it. So she says, my son is the definition of a proper child. He's respectful, hardworking, intelligent, and he's the yardstick other parents use in measuring their own children. I got a call while I just finished mentoring a desperate mom of an adolescent that my son, who took permission from me to go back to school, now his school is Unilag, was involved in an accident at Baduri Aja. For those who are not in Nigeria or who are not in Lagos State, the distance between Unilag, first and foremost, Unilag and Aja are in opposite directions, completely opposite directions. And the difference between them is over a 3 hour journey, right? So, although it wasn't fatal, the car was a write off, and none of the occupants had a driver's license. My son happened to be the driver. I had no idea he could even drive. They were all taken to the nearest police station, and I was called to bail him out. I mean, if as a mother you get this kind of call, please, what will your response be? How would you react to this? Let me even throw it open before we continue. Who wants to go? You get a call and this is what's happening. Your son says, oh, mom, I'm going to school. You're like, oh, bye. And then a few hours later, you're getting a call that your son is on the other side of town, involved in an accident. He happens to be the driver, and you had absolutely no idea the guy can even fight, right? So, what would you do? What would your response be? Who wants to go? The floor is yours.
Well, the first thing is I'll be in shock and will be full of denial since the child has been a good one and has never been involved in such behavior before.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I'm sure a lot of us will do. So, here's what the statistics say before we even delve into answering the question. Researchers have found that peak dishonesty occur in adolescence. So they say that teenagers are reported to tell an outright lie 25% of the time. They say teenagers are reported to withhold relevant information 50% of the time. According to Nancy Darling, she's an expert on teens and lying. She says close to 96% of adolescents lie to their parents. Also, we have here that studies have found that excessive monitoring by parents was not effective in preventing teen lying or teen alcohol use. That's because teens lie more when their parents are overly controlling. That I can even attest to. Finally, there's research that points that open communication and the freedom to openly disagree with parents result in more honest interaction. Now, why did I first bring up the statistics before we even began answering any question? The reason I did so is because in the course of our engagement with adolescents themselves, when we go to their school or with their parents, we find that parents have a an image of the child in their minds. The child themselves might be something completely different. Now, I'm not saying that there are no good adolescents out there. I mean, there are many, many, very many good adolescents. But I'm saying that once a parent becomes extremely controlling, I recall on day one, I was expressing how my growing up was, where my dad was the kind of person where you don't argue. If you argue or you ask a question that is kind of seeking clarity or you want further explanation on an instruction given to you, he sees it as you, or then he saw it as you being rude because he has changed a lot now. But then he'll see it as you being rude and you can be punished for it. And then he felt he was being strict, so that his children will not mess up like some of his peers' children. He wanted to avoid that for us. Unfortunately, what he was doing was making us develop strategies to perfectly hide who we truly are. And so I can even give a simple example. My 16th birthday, I was in SS3 at the time. My mom bake cake for me because we used to bake in the house then. She baked the cake for me, gave me money to buy drink, and I told her I was going to celebrate it in school. We were writing senior work at the time. When I got to school, my cake my cake landed in my boyfriend's house. My parents had no idea I even had a boyfriend. The money I was giving to buy crates of minerals, my friend told me that, you're not a big girl. How can you be buying minerals? Minerals is for children. Go and buy wine. I said, I don't have money for wine. And she was like, don't worry, I'm going to add to the money. And truly, she added to the money and we bought wine, different bottles of wine. I mean, here were my parents living, they've given me cake and money. And yeah, they cooked rice as well. So what I did was the rice, I shared it in school so that if anyone asks or if by coincidence my parents meet with any of my classmates or the teachers, they easily can say, oh wow, Toko celebrated her birthday in school. So that was just to be a cover. The real party did not happen in school. It happened in my boyfriend's house. He literally cleared his sitting room, had um a a music box and we were blasting to music. I mean, I went to school that day with my mufti in my bag. All of my classmates also came with mufti because they knew I was going to celebrate my birthday. So everyone changed in his house from uniform to party wear, right? And here were my parents thinking that, oh, their beautiful daughter, their very obedient daughter, was in school. And truly, I can relate to this mother's question because even my parents, for us growing up, we still are anyways, we used to be the example that other parents will use in judging, if I should use that word, because it's really judging their children. It's something I tell parents to desist from. It's not healthy at all. But back then, that's what they used to do. Can't you be like Tokwe? See how Tokwe is? They had no clue that this underground run were going on, right? In adolescence, these things, lying is very, very high if open communication and the freedom to openly disagree with parents are not is not established. I recall in one of the sessions I've had in the past, I do say that the LOT is the litmus test for you to know how psychologically safe your home is. And what is LOT? L is for love. How loved does your child feel? How open, that's O, is your communication channel. And T, how well does your child trust you? If there's a breakdown in any of these three, you're doing something wrong. And that's something the course is going to correct. When you go through the course, you're going to get way more details about that. So this is what the statistics say. The question is, so why do teenagers, why do they do this? Why do they lie? They lie to avoid getting into trouble. They lie to avoid getting embarrassed. They lie to protect or defend their friends. They lie to cover up emotions. They lie to make themselves look better. This was for me, for my 16th birthday. I know everybody saw me as daddy's girl. My dad was the PK chairman at the time, so he had a lot of influence in my school. People saw me as daddy's girl too. Doing a birthday party where I wasn't bringing crates of minerals, I was bringing wine, made me look like a big girl. Yeah. So they also lie to establish autonomy, and they lie not to hurt parents. It's interesting, and they lie sometimes for no reason at all. There's basically no reason to lie, but they still do this, right? These things can be avoided if you have mastered the art of being open enough for you to come to them. Like I said yesterday, vulnerability is strength masquerading as weakness. And you're going to see how that plays out in some of the answers I will be giving today. So, all right, so how to respond? Now, let's answer the question. Now that we have an idea of why they're doing this, because it's also very important to put perspectives in place. It's very important to understand the other person's perspective. The person does not have to be right. So understanding somebody else's perspective is not saying that you drop yours and just embrace that person. No. It's saying I see where you're coming from. However, and that's something adolescents, especially teenagers, especially, that's something they crave. Because as parents, it's difficult for us to see when they change from being children to adults. I mean, my youngest brother is a little over 20. I think he's, oh, 21 now, Jesus. Right? And there are times where I still look at him and I'm like, you're just a small boy. And in his mind, he's telling me, Tibob, please don't call me a small boy. I'm not a small child. There are times he'll make decisions and I want to raise my brows. And I'll just remember this guy is not a child. And if I become an overbearing parent, because I'm way older than he is, I'm kind of like his second mother. So if I become overbearing, he's going to keep away from me. So, but in learning this, because as um, for those who were around on day one, when I shared my story with you, you'll understand how we evolved into doing what we do now. And by virtue of my experience, I realized that um, I would rather he is able to come to me to open up about things he's going through, mistakes he's making, than for him to bottle them up and want to talk to a peer and end up even making further decisions. And it really has worked out because there are times where he doesn't even talk to my parents about an issue. He speaks to me about them. We discuss it. I ask questions. He gives me answers. He asks me questions. We do that back and forth. And when we are done, then we table the matter before my parents. So it's only because I am also implementing the LOT yardstick, right? I'm also implementing everything I'm teaching. I do my best to make sure that what I teach is not just science based and just a figment of my imagination. I try as much as possible to inculcate it into my daily life so that I can also have personal experiences to share that back up these things. So how to respond. At the beginning of this class, I had said that our response will be the same. And our response throughout all of the questions that will be asked is the STOP principle. That's what I want to teach you today. I mentioned yesterday that I was going to talk about the STOP principle. It's an emotional intelligence strategy that everyone should have at their fingertips because it, it saves us costly mistakes. So for this mother, what's the first thing she should do is to slow down. She should calm down, right? I have seen parents who, when they get terrible news about their children, when they see the children face to face, the first thing they do is just to start kicking that child back and forth. And I'm usually like, oh, first, you don't even understand why this person behaved the way he did. Second, if you are this aggressive, it becomes even more difficult for them to want to trust you. And trust me, they are in a biological phase where they are very vulnerable. I tell them, especially when I go to secondary schools, I tell them and I show them that biologically they are vulnerable. Psychologically, they are vulnerable. And it's not entirely their fault. It's because their body is in a transitory state from childhood to adulthood. So adolescence becomes that window of transition, and you know how unstable transitions can be. So they're in a phase where they truly need you, even though they behave as though they don't. And so I tell parents, the first thing you do is calm down, just relax, calm down, right? Slow down. That's the first. The S, slow down. The T is thankfulness. Um, to operate to before responding to a situation, I prefer to use the word respond rather than react because when we react, um, we don't allow a lot of processes to go on. We just bam do it, right? But to respond, when you slow down, you're calm. It's difficult. Let me first put that caveat out there. It's difficult and it can be especially painful. And I'm going to share a story, another story as to how painful this can be, right? Thankfulness. When you receive a terrible news like this, find something to be grateful for. It's not just I'm not just saying it for saying sake. There are biological proof as to why this is so, right? There are two hormones in biology we call the happy hormones, serotonin and dopamine. I mean, when people are high, those two hormones are very high. When you enter into a state of thankfulness, those hormones are being secreted. And when they are secreted, they douse the effect of a particular stress hormone in the body called cortisol. Cortisol is something, it's a hormone that's easily triggered when you're under stress. And I mean, a news like this will allow for a lot of adrenaline and cortisol to be pumped into your system. So operating in thankfulness helps you douse the effect of the cortisol, the stress hormone, and gives you a sense of it positions you to enter into a sense of clarity, right? So when you do the first, you slow down, you observe thankfulness. The next thing to do is to observe your emotions. Very important, because until your emotions are calm, it does not make any sense for you to make a decision. The reason being that many times when we make decisions when we're upset, we don't give our brains the ability and the possibility to filter through various options and choose the best for you. We act on the spur of the moment, and when you act on the spur of the moment, there's a part of the brain called the amygdala. It's called the seat of emotions. Now, when there's a trigger, that's the first place that is triggered in the brain, the limbic system, the amygdala, right? But if you give yourself time, you practice the stop principle, give yourself time, the signal will move from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex. The prefrontal cortex, that's the seat of logical thinking. So when you are rash, you are in a very stressed situation, right? You receive a news like this, your boy was involved in an accident, he lied to you that he was going to school, whereas you found him elsewhere, hours away from school, right? Your emotions can be raging. You'll be upset, you'll be disappointed, you'll be tempted to say a lot of things that you don't really mean. And because they are teenagers, young children, they are in a phase where the words you speak, they soak it like sponge. So later, when you even come back to say, I'm sorry, they will hear that you said I'm sorry, but my God, you have deposited seeds that will take time to heal from, right? So it's always important. Observe your emotions. If you find out that after practicing S and T, your emotions are still raging, please, there's no need to even take any further step. Go back to S and T again. That's Look for everything and anything to help you become thankful. Look for something to be grateful for. In this situation, okay, he was involved in an accident. At least he didn't die. Thank you, God. At least they didn't lock him in jail. Oh, thank you, God. At least I'm not crying over a dead body. Thank you, Lord. I just find something to say thank you for. It will help you calm down. And then once you are calm, the final thing is to plan next steps. Now, before I go to the next slide, to now talk about the changes, there's very steps to take. I want to share a story. It's the story of a girl named Susan. At the time this happened, Susan was about 15 years old. So she was living with her mom. Her dad was abroad. There was just her and her mom. Her mom began to notice some changes in her daughter and became suspicious. You know how we mothers are. When something is off, I mean, we just step into the FBI duties and begin to try to probe and find out what's going on. And so at about 2 a.m. one particular night, Susan's mom woke up. She had no idea why she even woke up because she's a very deep sleeper. She woke up at that time and was to go eat herself when she had murmurs, and she tiptoed, wondering, where's this coming from? Is there an intruder? What's going on? And she found that, oh, it was her daughter talking. Her daughter was in the room. It was in the era of MTN midnight call. Remember that era now, where we just be on the call for hours from 12:30 to 4:30 or 5 a.m. Just talking. It was during that era, and Susan's mom went to the door and was eavesdropping. We mothers, you know how now, you know how we do this thing. She was eavesdropping, and she began to hear things that in her wildest dreams she had never even thought about. Her daughter was having phone sex. Literally, her daughter was moaning, doing, saying dirty things, things she had never even thought of saying to her husband, things she had no idea existed. She was hearing her daughter, 15-year-old girl, saying things like that. I mean, the woman saw red. She was about to burst into the room, hit the girl, seize the phone, blast the person on the other end of the call, ground her daughter. Think of every punishment imaginable. I mean, as a mother, you hear your 15-year-old having sex on the phone. You hear that this is not a one-off situation. This is something that has been happening, and you realize that it's not just phone sex. Actual sex has happened. Phone sex is just a continuum. She was about to barge into the room when she remembered that she had been taught the stop principle. She just walked away, went into her room, and broke down in tears. The tears were tears of anger, tears of pain, tears of disappointment. You just name it. Since there was no way to express her anger, because if she had walked into that room, she was going to beat her daughter blue black, right? So since there was no way to express it, the only way to express it was to cry. This woman cried all night, wiped her face, began to thank God. At least, thank God I found out that this is going on. What if I don't find out? What if it's that she comes home pregnant? Or what if it's that she gets pregnant and goes for an abortion and I have no clue that something like this is happening under my own roof? Right? So she began to just think of things to be grateful for, spent her night trying to do that. It was a difficult task because when she remembers what she heard again, she just breaks down all over and like, my God, how can this be happening under my roof? So after doing that, she observed her emotions, found out that she was calm, and she began to plan her next steps. What did Susan's mom do? The first thing she did was to pretend she never had that conversation. Rather, she developed a 1 month plan to befriend her daughter. Some of the tools in the courses were some of the tools she used. In the course, I beg your pardon, was those were some of the tools she used, right, to befriend her daughter. At the end of 1 month, you find that Susan will come back from school early, hardly waiting back in school, wanting to stay with mommy in the kitchen because her mom would tell her stories of her growing up experiences. Kitchen time became like bonding time. Sometimes they'll both go out, go to restaurants, just make new memories, make new experiences, go for picnics. And then at the end of it all, there's a particular day where they had a heart to heart, and Susan's mom then opened up, right? It was a heart to heart where this time around, mother began to tell her of her own mistakes as a child, how she had multiple abortions, which was why she could only give birth to Susan and could not give Susan a younger brother or sister because the abortion did some sort of damage to the womb, and Susan came as a kind of miracle. Yeah, even she almost lost her life while giving birth to Susan, so she didn't bother trying anymore, right? So she gave her background story, how she was deceived by a guy, etc. At the end of it all, the mother was weeping as she was narrating the story because the only person who really knew her story was her husband. And so, in explaining and sharing her story with her daughter, even her daughter burst into tears. They both were crying at the end of the session. And then the mother says, Susan, let me make a confession. I overheard you the other day talking with someone called Charles. You were doing this, and this. And of course, Susan was at first shocked, but because an emotionally safe environment had already been created, Susan also began to try to convince her mother that, oh, Charles is a good guy. Charles loves me. Charles says when I'm done with school, he's going to marry me, blah, blah, blah. And the mother is like, okay, if that's what you think it is, why not let's formulate a plan? Tell him you're pregnant. After all, if he says he truly wants to marry you, he's going to want to come see me. And he will, he, even though he's not ready for family life now, he will take responsibility because he has decided that you're the girl he wants. And Susan's like, oh, that's not a bad idea. She's going to do it just to prove to her mother that Charles is a good guy. Of course, we all know how the story went. When she told Charles, Charles first lashed out and then told her that the only reason he's with her is because he went into a bet with his friend that this good girl, with the two shoes girl, I'm going to be the one to get her into bed. Many guys have tried, but Susan had standards, she had morals, she had values, she came from a family of values. And so this guy decided to use all kinds of trickery and manipulation to get her. So imagine Susan finding out that their relationship was a lie, it was only based on a bet. And he told her, you're not the only girl who has gotten pregnant from me. Go and abort the thing. I'm not interested at all. Susan got home. Immediately, her mom saw the puffy eyes. She knew what had happened, right? And from that day, they became best of friends. From that day, Susan trusted her mom with her life. Even if she wanted to make a decision, she would seek her mom's consent. If her mom says no, they would have that argument back and forth no, this is why I want to do it. The mom will say, no, this is why you shouldn't do it. At the end of the day, they both end up agreeing. Susan will not take a step without her mom's endorsement. That was how close they became. But that story would have been different if Susan's mom did not practice the stop principle. If Susan's mom had batched into that room at the time, which is what many of us will do, because I mean, it's difficult to hear your girl child going through that and you are calm. It's a Herculean task. You need to have a superb amount of self control, not to have barged into the room at that time. Yeah. So imagine she had barged into the room, slapped her, collected the phone, grounded her, tell her immediately after school you have to come home, pounding her. What's going to happen is that Susan will assume and she'll say to herself, oh, I'm suffering for the sake of love, right? So she's going to look for creative ways to sneak around, creative ways to bend the rules, creative ways to, lie without getting caught. And this time around, she's going to be very cautious because now she knows her mom is aware. She's going to be really cautious and very secretive. In that kind of atmosphere, right, it will be very difficult for Susan and her mom to even build any kind of bond. It will become a hate relationship. But that was averted simply because her mother used the stock principle. That's how powerful the stock principle is. So now, in answering the question I asked about the lying teenager, the first thing to do is stop. The second is to explore perspectives. It's very, very important to know the reason behind the other person's actions. Like I said earlier, the actions, it does not have to be right. The actions do not have to be right at all, but understanding why is also very important. Um, okay, I wasn't planning on talking about this, but just let me briefly begin. When we go to schools to talk to adolescents, we show them five major areas of their brain that make them vulnerable. For example, the ventral striatum. That place is called the reward center, right? In adolescence, it's not properly developed. And so when they are thinking about a decision or thinking about something to do, especially when under pressure, they always look at it more in the sense of what can I get from it, right? How does this reward me? How does this bring me pleasure? Right? That's a biological vulnerability going on there. So it's the quality of your relationship that will help them hone skills that will help them override that mechanism because the brain is plastic. The brain is very plastic. You can rework it and rewire it into anything, right? The amygdala, spoken about the amygdala in adolescence, because the prefrontal cortex, which is the seat of logical thinking, is not properly developed. Adolescents think more with their amygdala, right? So they think more with their emotions. It's basically based on how they feel. Unfortunately, adolescents also misinterpret emotional cues. So there are certain facial expression you might give or do that they misinterpret. One of the things we usually do when we go to schools is that we show them series of pictures, facial expressions, and we ask them to name it. Every single time, about 80% of the time, when adolescents see an extreme emotion, say emotions like shock, emotions like surprise, extreme surprise, they interpret it as anger, emotions as extreme fear. They interpret it as anger, and we are like, it's always interesting to watch. Actually, it's always very interesting to watch, right? So adolescents sometimes misinterpret what we are trying to say, how we are behaving because of their biological vulnerability. It's why you need to explore. You need to know why. Why do they behave this way? I give an example. I was in SS2, no, SS1, when my parents relocated from Lagos State to Ogun State. So for those who know Nigeria or Lagos and Ogun very well, you know that there's a Moe Bako area. There's a period where that place became hot cake. Most people living in Lagos were building houses in the Moe Bako area. My dad did, and so we had to relocate there. But I was still going to my school in Lagos, right? And this particular Friday, back then I used to deal with ulcer. So this particular Friday, we closed from school at 2 p.m. I walked with my friends. We got to the bus stop. There were no buses. They said there was a convention on the road. There was standstill. Buses said they were not going. Eventually, the one that said they were going inflated the transportation cost and over 500 or 600%. I mean, it was ridiculous. Beautiful enough, I had the exact amount, but the implication was I could not buy water, I could not buy anything to eat in transit. And the last meal I had that day was 11 a.m., right? And this was, I got to the park at about 3 p.m., right? So eventually I paid 1,000 naira. Back then, okay, it was 900% because back then, fare was 100 naira a year. So I paid 1,000 naira. That was all. So I was thirsty. I was hungry. My tummy was rumbling. And you know how hunger aggravates our ulcer? My God, I was in severe pain. I did not get home until 2 a.m. that particular the following morning. Unfortunately, my phone was dead. I had used all of my battery to do midnight call, and the rest of the battery charge, could not suffice. It was a Nokia touchlight phone then, and those batteries last for long. But I always, I always forgot to charge my phone. I mean, I always. It's not like now I remember. I always forgot. So my phone was dead. My parents could not reach me. I couldn't reach anybody. 2 a.m. I got home. As I pressed the bell, it was my dad who opened the gate. As soon as I opened the gate, the first words out of his mouth was, "What is wrong with you? Where have you been? I've been trying to call you. What's all this nonsense?" As in, he was just screaming. I was so mad. In my heart, I was saying, "Don't you even care about me? I've been in traffic for hours. I am dying. I'm so hungry. My tummy is hurting. I don't even know if I have omeprazole in the house. I was so mad at him. I just walked past him, very upset. He was just screaming. When I went into my room, I was crying that this man hates me. It was years later when I began to study on developmental psychology that I replayed what happened that night. And I realized that the facial expression my dad gave actually that night was not anger, it was fear. I mean, his first daughter, you couldn't reach her all morning, all afternoon, all night. This is 2 a.m. A girl should not even, because where we live, because we were one of the newest occupants to move in there at the time. So they still had this village culture of Oro. Oro is I don't even know how to describe Oro festival. Those in Lagos will know Oro festival, but for those who are not in Lagos and who are also joining from different parts of the country, because we have some people here from Zambia, Texas, Ohio, um, and so on. So Oro festival here is a traditional festival where they say women should not come out because they are doing a sacrifice. I don't even know how to describe it. They are performing a sacrifice, and if women come out, those women will be sacrificed to the gods. Yeah, and even men, only men that are a part of the cult can come out. Men who are not should also not come out. So it was dangerous for women to even be walking at that time of the night. But fortunately, I got home. So it was years later I found out that the man was just scared silly. He wasn't angry at me, but that was what I interpreted. It's why, again, I say explore perspectives, because sometimes what you see and what you are saying is not what they are saying and it's not what they are hearing, right? You might be saying A and you strongly believe what you're communicating is A, but what they are hearing is BCD, right? So it's important to know where they are coming from, understand why this person did this. Why did you lie to me that you were going to Unilag, whereas you went to Aja? So for this boy's case, the reason he did that was his parents were very strict, and they didn't want him to, have when he says, "Oh, I'm going to so and so friend's house," they'll be like, "Can't you sit in your own house?" So basically, he was socially awkward, no friends, nothing. And then guys in his class, they do mock him and say, "Oh, your mommy's boy, you're such a lazy boy, you don't do this." And so it was beginning to get to him. So he felt that if he asked his parents, they would say, no, you can't go as usual. Therefore, let me just go behind their back. That was the reason why he did that. Was that right? No. But then, what does that perspective show you? It shows that, oh, you're probably being too stringent. How about if you are scared that your child will go to another friend's house and imbibe the wrong culture? How about you make your house their meeting place? Let them come to you. So you too, you can physically see these are the friends he's keeping. That way you can identify who is the bad egg among them, how to separate that friendship, destroy that friendship from continuing, right? But they weren't doing that. So exploring perspectives made this woman know that, okay, on my end, I've been too strict. I don't intend to be over lenient and become a doormat, but however, you can start bringing your friends at home. This was also something I had experienced. And then, in response to this question, is to engage the world of adolescence. This will take us a whole new conversation, and that's why the course is titled Engaging the World of Adolescence. You're going to get a lot of juice from it that will just explain to you what engaging the world of adolescence means. And then you have to re-emphasize the importance of honesty, irrespective of why he lied to you. It does not change the fact that a lie is a lie and it should not be tolerated, right? So you have to re-emphasize the importance of honesty. You have to let him know that the easiest route is to lie. It takes a stronger person, a bigger person to be honest, especially in situations where honesty might be difficult to do. And you also have to model honesty. I mean, you can't ask your child to be honest and you're lying. Um, because there was a particular day, someone came to see my dad. Was it my dad or my mom? I don't even recall now. But someone came to see my parents, and one of them just said casually, "We'll tell them I'm not around, Jerry," because he really was. They weren't in the mood to see anybody. And this person, in my house, we usually have a policy that before you come, at least inform your host that you're coming. That way, they can tell you if they're going to be around to host you or not, and or you reschedule, right? But this person didn't do that. So I went there and said, "Oh, my daddy said I should tell you that he's not around." Oh my god, I was beaten seriously that day. But you can't do things like that and expect your child to be honest. You can't tell a lie, call it a white lie. A lie is a lie, whether white, blue, black, green, yellow. A lie is a lie. If you're going to model honesty, if you want honesty from them, you have to model it, because the truth is, I know it's something we say, and it's almost becoming cliche that children copy actions rather than instructions given. It's almost becoming cliche, but it is the absolute truth. Model honesty so that they can see that in this dispensation where honest people are becoming scarce, they can stand out as honest people. And then you also have to understand that this is a process. These things take time. You will not always get it right the first time. Don't beat yourself up about it. Just remember the AHA system of thought that reminds you of your humanity, that you can make mistakes and you get over them, right? So understand that this is a process. It's not a an immediate change that would always happen. Many times it's a process. So give yourself time and give your child time. Finally, teach problem solving skills. One of the reasons they lie is because it's easier to just lie to get out of a problem. But when you are able to sit with the problem and develop solutions to the problem, you are teaching that child to grow in problem solving. And this is a skill that many organizations are looking for. Not many people have the ability to do this, because this dispensation, we want things quickly, we want things fast, and we want things very easy. Lying is an easy way out, right? So you have to teach your child problem solving skills. For example, uh, your child is in a school. Yeah, I've had this experience too, and I've had to counsel some adolescents on this. Your child is in a school where everyone is a rich kid. You know, their parents fly them out and in of Nigeria all over the world, and then your child is someone who's just coming from a lower class family or something, and then your child has to be in the presence of these people, and the wealth they're flaunting is beginning to affect the child. It's easy for this child to also want to lie and say, "Oh, my dad took me here too. My dad did this." But when this child is developing problem solving skills, he will begin to ask himself questions. Okay, what they are doing is getting to me. How do I make sure that in spite of all of this, I protect my heart, I protect my values, I protect my morals, all of those things. It reminds me of a time I was in primary four, and I really didn't have friends. I grew up in a family where my dad didn't believe in you going to friend's house. And if I want to go visit a friend, I always have to say that I want to go and copy a note. And he will ask, what were you doing when others were writing? And I would just tell him maybe my school counselor called me for something, or I went for relay race competition because I was in the relay race and stuff. So I was socially awkward as a child. Sometimes I still think I am. I'm just trying to get better now. My dad took me to his boss's birthday party. At the time, he was still very low on the organizational chart. His boss was way, 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 way high up there. And I was in the midst of children who obviously were not Nigerian bred. Obviously, from their intonation, their gestures, their behavior, you know that this one money was speaking, right? And we were just from a very, very low class. We were barely having 3 square meals. Yeah. And so I sat in a corner. My mom had dressed me up in a three-piece suit. I was very uncomfortable. I didn't like it. But I was so grateful when I eventually got there because I was the one who looked the most matured amongst all of the children there. And then I just sat in a corner reading a novel. This was primary four. Back then, my mates used to read storybooks, but I didn't enjoy storybooks. I felt books with pictures. What kind of book is that? So at primary four, I was already reading 300-page books, 300-page novels. There was one of those novels I took there. And one of those girls saw me. I was like, oh, hey, hi, hello, in British accent and all. I'm like, oh, good morning, good afternoon. It's like, oh, you're reading that? There's no single picture there. I'm like, oh, these are the kind of books I like to read. I think she was just blown away by my confidence, even though I really wasn't confident. I just enjoyed reading those books, so I had something to speak about, right? And others began to gravitate towards me. So I, who started out feeling least important, feeling below them, ended up feeling so confident. They literally boosted my confidence right there. It goes to show that problem solving skills, I could have cowered and tried to pretend, but I decided that, well, what I know to do best is read. I could not relate to the kind of games they were playing. I couldn't relate to the way they were speaking. Some were speaking too fast. I didn't even understand what they were saying. So I just sat in my novel. But it helped me. So you have to teach your child problem solving skills so that they don't resort to lying, right? So that's that about the first one, the parent child relationship. The second is the husband wife relationship. For the parent child relationship, I actually received a lot of questions. So I don't know, maybe I should just spend the next week answering them one after the other because I got quite a number of questions and I just had to choose one. Um, okay, I will also address this. I think after this, I'll open the floor for conversation. And then I would continue with the last two questions, and then I close it and we start with question and answers so that I can stop recording for that session. So, question two. My husband primarily is the sole provider of our home. Oh, sorry. My business brings in money sometimes, but it's not consistent. For months, I may not make any money, and my husband has to bear the burden. In the beginning, it's beginning to affect our relationship, and I'm beginning to feel like a dead weight. What do I do? What the stats say? TD Ameritrade, a financial firm, mentioned that 41% of divorced Gen X and 29% of the baby boomers say their marriage ended due to disagreement about money. Money issues are responsible for 22% of all divorces, making it the third leading cause, according to the Institute for Divorce Financial Analysis. According to a study by SunTrust, money issues are so troublesome that people who say they're experiencing stress in their relationship cite finances as the number one reason, easily beating out the second place contender, annoying our habits. So these statistics already show that money conversations, money problems really eat into the husband-wife relationship, and that's why this was the question I chose for this session. Of course, when you're in that state where you're wondering, oh my God, I feel like I'm a deadbeat. My husband is the one always carrying all of the burden and I'm not doing anything. My business just brings in periodic money, even though when he brings in money, it brings in huge, but he just brings in money periodically. What do I do? How do I deal with it? The first is stop, right? Stop. Because when you think about your situation in the way this woman is going about it, you're going to end up dwelling more. Oh, can you hear me now? I can see the chat. Unfortunately, I can't hear you clearly. Please, can you hear me now? Oh, the network. Oh my goodness. Okay, so what was the last place you could hear? Maybe I should switch to another network. What was the last thing you heard? Let me go back. When I read the question. Okay. Okay. Okay, after the question. Okay, is the network clear now? Or do I switch? Is it clear now? Okay. Okay, please hold on. Let me switch. Okay, can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. It's much better. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much for bringing it to my attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I'm opening the document again. Yeah. So let me go back to the question since that was the last place. Okay. This is the second question. My husband primarily Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I
Can
can.
I?
I can hear.
Okay,
Yes, I can hear.
thank you for bringing it to my attention. So, let me go
Mm-hmm.
back to eyes. I've alternated between both methods, and I don't even know which is better. Okay, so money issues are responsible for 22% of all divorces, making it the third leading cause, and that's from Institute for Divorce Financial Analysis. And then, according to a study by SunTrust, money issues are so troublesome that people who say they're experiencing stress in their relationship cite finances as the number one reason, easily beating out the second place contender, annoying habits. Can you still hear me?
Yes, yes, I can.
Okay, thank you. So, how do we respond to this woman's question? The first thing is to practice the stop principle again, right? When you are in this phase of mind, it is very easy to begin to dwell on the negatives over the positives. It's an easy place to fall into. But then we don't get solutions from doing that. If anything, we complicate things because we then begin to transfer our frustrations, when we speak, because we give subtle body languages, subtle emotional cues that even though you are smiling, if you are angry in your heart, there are emotional cues that psychologists look out for. They can easily pinpoint that, oh, this person is just smiling, but the smile is not a genuine one, right? So when you're in that state of mind, it's very easy to dwell on the negatives. And when you dwell on the negatives, more often than not, you use those negative variables as your parameters to reach a solution or a decision. And oftentimes, it's usually not the best decision for you, for your spouse, or even for your family. So the first thing is to practice stop all over again until you get to the point when you can observe your emotions and find that you're in a state of tranquility, a state of peace, a state of calm where you can then objectively plan, right? So when that happens, the second thing is to also explore perspectives. I can personally relate to this woman's story. I resigned from my workplace in 2018, March. March, yes, March 2018. So by April, I didn't have a job. I just stayed at home, you know. I was just trying to heal because for 2 years prior to that, I was working in a toxic environment where my boss was beating me, sexually harassing me, just it was a really toxic workplace environment. So I spent all of April just trying to heal from the trauma of working in that kind of organization. And then by May, I got an offer of employment, and I got there, work. By December, I had to resign for many reasons. One day I'll say the reason, but I had to resign by December. Okay, the reason I was resigning was if I was working with my immediate boss then, um, who is now my husband. So, and then there's the office policy where office romance isn't embraced. So one of us had to step down, and I was willing to step down. So by January 2019, I was without a job. Interestingly, all the while I was working in my other place, I was getting job offers, and so I began to reach out to them in January. All of them were like, no space, no space, no space. By February, I started my business, what I do now. The entirety of 2019, my business made 15,000 naira. And the 15,000 naira was made in December of 2019. So from February it started to December, nothing came in because we were spending. I wasn't married at the time, but he just began to take responsibility for me, right? By 2020, which was when we got married, by 2020, my business. So after the last 15K, there was break in transmission, and COVID also aggravated it. There was break in transmission for a while, no income from the business. My husband was the one just catering to the both of us. And then um, we made 30,000 naira by 2020, and that was in 2020 July. After that, there was silence again on my business. Are you seeing the progression? And this is me, a master's degree holder. There's no organization I've worked with where I was not an asset. I'd never struggled to have a job before. In fact, I never thought I would be doing the business. It was as an offshoot of the pain and the trauma of my growing up experience and that workplace experience that made me start out the business. So imagine me already saying to myself that what kind of life is this? It's not like I can't get a job if I want to. Why am I even killing myself doing this kind of business? People will listen to me, they say they're impacted. Give me money. Nobody's giving me money. What's all this? And they're just putting pressure on my husband. So I entered into that state to say I totally can relate to this woman's question. That's why I put it up because I could very, 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 very well relate. And then by the end of 2021, the okay, so from beginning of 2021 to August or July, zero naira, nothing came in. I think for 2020, the money that came in, we used it to set up the cost that we're giving out for free. So it's not like there was profit or anything. We poured it back to the business. By 2021, July, there still was no income. My husband was the one catering to two people. I mean, in this Lagos, one person should not even be bearing the cost. Two people are struggling to pay for everything. How much more one person? I became extremely concerned. There were multiple times I said I was starting a business. I don't want to do business again. Let me go to a place where I know money will be coming in monthly. So I'm not doing it. He had to be the one encouraging me, right? So I was in this phase where this woman was feeling like dead weight, feeling that this man is carrying my body. This is not something he signed up for now. Marriage is partnership. So why is he the one bearing all of this body? Why can't I help? Right? So I became desperate. I told him, I'm packing up. I'm not doing it again. Sell the business, close the business, whatever we're doing, I'm not doing it again. And he began to encourage me, right? And so I began to see through his own lens. Would you imagine that for him, he was finding fulfillment in me doing what I am doing? Because every time he sees me do what I'm doing, it just gives him a sense of pride that, oh, this woman is mine. Look at the impact she's making. Oh my God, see the way her eyes light up when she's talking. Those things give him a sense of joy and it makes everything he's doing worth it. I didn't know that. For me, I was feeling like maybe he's not talking because he doesn't want to complain. I'm dead weight, I'm not helping. But I had no idea that I was his muse. Me doing what I am doing made him, it gave him a sense of drive. When someone asks, oh, how's your wife? What's she doing? He's always proud to speak about what I'm doing. And when people hear this is what I am doing, they're like, oh, can you come to my church to do this? Can you come to the mosque to do this? I meet with this group of people. Can you come do this for me? He finds pride in that. I didn't know. So if I did not have a conversation with him, I would still have been beating myself up, talking down on myself, and invariably I'm going to transfer that pain in conversations I will have with him, right? So exploring perspective, very key. And then by August of 2021, we had a breakthrough. As in, we had a I don't even know how to describe it. It was just miraculous. It was nothing short of design where someone just picked us and like, oh no, I want what you're doing, and paid heavily for it for the first time. And I was like, if this man had listened to me when I was trying to make a rash decision in my pain, this would not be happening. And it was that one experience that ushered us into corporate wellness. That one singular experience. And I was just about to quit the month before. So if this woman continues on this path, she's going to make a decision that in the long run she would regret. The beautiful thing was the organization that called us in for corporate wellness that particular month. The year before, it was an organization I wanted to apply to become a salary earner there. It was just funny. A year later, I'm going back there to go teach the executives. And I'm like, I'm grateful. I had to start thanking him. Thank you for making me see through your lens, making me see that you're not ashamed of me, making me see that you don't feel like I'm dead weight. I'm the one just thinking it. So this woman has to do that. She needs to master communication with her spouse. And then even if after speaking to her spouse feels that she truly is dead weight, then they both can speak and reach a particular resolution that's okay for the both of them. But without communicating, one person, if not both, will grow in resentment and bitterness, and the end result is always terrible. Yeah. So the first is understand your partner's money mindset. It is very important. For someone like me, I like food though. I'm not even on the big side, unfortunately. I'm on the very, very lean side. But I like good food. God knows that when I have money, back then when I was in school, if all I had, the last cash I have is 500 naira, rather than break that 500 naira into 50, 50, 50, 50, where I'll be eating barely enough food or eating food that I don't like, I would take the 500 naira and buy a beautiful meal. It will be like my last meal that I'm eating this. After this, into thy hands I commit my spirit. I don't know what next. I would rather do that. That was the kind of mindset I have. It's now that it's beginning to switch. But then I prioritize food. A lot of women will prioritize bag, will prioritize hair, will prioritize perfume, skincare, whatever. Mine was food, right? But for my husband, that's not his priority. It's interesting to know that his money mindset is spending on his wife. He finds it difficult to even spend on himself. I'm the one who will collect the money, then go back and spend it back on him. Like, guy, you to buy for yourself now, right? It's important to understand your partner's money mindset because when one person is the one bringing in income, and you both think about money differently, it will cause a clash. If the husband believes that money is meant for investment, you're not supposed to use money to buy hair, buy shoe, buy anything to look good. Just maintain what you've had for the last 10 years and continue to use it, even though there's money to spend on this thing. But the woman's mindset is we have enough, food is enough, the house is in good shape, everything is okay. This extra, I want to top up the way I look. If that's her my money mindset, she and her husband will clash if they don't do number three, which is communicate. So understanding your partner's money mindset is also very, very important. And then they need to come up with a system like CPUs. Um, when I'm saying come up with a system, I'm saying that strategize. So in some families, I know it's something we also do. There's a particular percentage that is meant for rent, particular percentage meant for housekeeping savings. Housekeeping, there's the one for savings, there's the one for emergency, there's the one for tithe, there's the one for in percentages. Come up with a system where in percentages you are allocating money so that way everybody is contented. The husband does not feel like I'm bringing in money. I can't see what I'm using my money for in my life. The woman is not feeling like, hey, I'm even scared to ask for money before this man thinks I want to milk him dry. There's already a system, so everybody knows where each portion of this money is going into. It's very, very important. It's going to help minimize a lot of the money fights we have. And then number three, which I think is the final one before we go into question and answer so that I can stop recording, is the woman with the difficult boss. So she's saying that I have a very stubborn boss. He literally tries to control my time, even outside office hours. At 4 a.m., I could get a text asking me to do something official. And when I refuse, he guilt trips me into accepting. He's also very difficult and set in his ways. I'm thinking of exiting even though I don't have a backup plan. So um this question is from a woman who is struggling with her boss. When I just summarized that place where she said he's set in his ways. So this boss is also someone who strongly believes that women in the workplace are women, if I should use that word, where there's a conference meeting and a woman is there, and the men are sitting waiting for the woman to come serve the tea and coffee. That type of traditional mindset. That's the kind of mindset he also has. Apart from the fact that he's calling her out to do work-related activities outside of work hours. So what does that say? According to Inc., 3 out of 4 employees report their boss is the worst and most stressful part of their job. According to Stress Research Institute in Stockholm, people who report having bosses they didn't respect were 60% more likely to suffer a heart attack or another life-threatening cardiac condition. According to Inc., 65% of employees say they'd choose a new boss over a pay raise. So basically, this stat is backing up the fact that when one is in an organization, a toxic organization, toxicity is basically from the kind of manager or the kind of boss they report to, right? So that's what this woman is experiencing. So again, stop. She needs to stop, because if she's making decisions based on her emotions, she could make wrong decisions. For example, one of the things she says there is that she has no backup plan. Now, when I resigned from that toxic workplace, I also resigned without a backup plan. So there are situations that warrant not having a backup plan. Don't even wait for a backup plan. Run for your life if you don't want to die. You already see the stats saying that cardiac arrest is a huge possibility for people who have terrible bosses. Yeah. But then I could escape from that because I was still living with my parents. So I wasn't paying rent, I wasn't paying for food. All I was paying for was my transportation and self upkeep. That's all. So I could live without a backup plan. Yeah, there are some people who have a lot of people dependent on them and might not be able to easily exit. Although when it's beginning to threaten your health, please, exiting is non-negotiable. Someone who is alive that can continue to work. But yeah, for this woman, she needs to stop, right? She needs to slow down. She needs to find something to be thankful for. She needs to observe her emotions. When she's in a state of tranquility, she can then plan her next steps. So, what are the next steps? The first thing, again, for her to do is to explore perspectives. So, she's asking a question: why is my boss behaving the way he's doing? Right? Many times in relationships now, generally, we always see things from our end and we often assume that our end is the correct one. I recall yesterday when I shared the story about food, where I returned from work expecting that my husband would have probably helped me with making a dish, only to come back and he's asking me what am I going to make, and I was so upset. And eventually, when I found out why he behaved that way, I realized that he had my best interest at heart. He actually had to sacrifice himself because he was very hungry. He was on drugs, but still had to wait for me so that he doesn't tamper with whatever the food plan was. And it was that moment we actually even came to an agreement where we said once it's 6 a.m. and I'm not home, it means I may be coming late. We can text to ask ourselves, okay, what's the backup plan? What's for food, so that nobody's waiting for anybody. We can all, sort ourselves out. So exploring perspectives is very, very important. Find out, why is this man doing this to me? Am I the only one he's doing this to? Am I the only person he's speaking on? Is this a general thing? Is this his mindset? Is he wanting to frame me? Explore perspectives, but you have to explore perspectives only when you have practiced the stop principle, so that you're not exploring perspectives from a place of bias. The third is to study your boss's communication style. In the course of corporate training, one of the things I found out was that different bosses have different communication styles. Some of these bosses don't even understand the kind of employees they have, and don't even know that for a particular kind of employee, you need to have a particular communication style if you're going to make work effective and productive for all involved, right? So some bosses don't know that. employees will have to be the one to step up to understand your boss's communication style. There are some bosses who know how to properly express. There are some who don't express well and just expect you to pick it, right? Recall the story I shared of my secondary school experience where I assumed my father was angry at me, whereas he was extremely scared. These things also happen in the workplace where the boss's tone or his methodology in speaking might give off an aggressive feel, whereas that's not really what he's trying to communicate. He's just aggressive. For me, growing up, I grew up in a house where everybody talk, we all talk at the top of our voices. Normally, you're not arguing yet. When you're arguing, it becomes really, really, really crazy. But even outside of arguments, just normal conversations, my family growing up, we weren't using bedroom voices. We're using compound compound voices. Yeah. And then I got married, and I'll be talking to my husband. He will say, "But I'm right here. Why are you shouting?" Like, I'm not shouting. I'm just talking. He'll say, "But I'm here. You can tone down your volume." So I had to start mastering, or I had to start learning how to tone down my volume. But that's because he knew that my growing up, it was loud. And so I am not particularly shouting at him. That's just the way I talk. I'm trying to do better now. There are times I still catch myself shouting, but when I remember, I drop my volume again. Like, okay, okay, be a good girl, be a good girl. So that's because he understands. So I could be speaking to somebody else and talking at the top of my voice, and the person feels like I'm trying to dominate the conversation and not realize that my normal method way of talking based on my growing up experience is just talking loud, right? So you have to understand your boss's communication style. Perhaps he's not he's not particularly picking on you, or he doesn't entirely mean the things he's saying. It just comes off that way, right? And then choose your words carefully. This is something I also learned from my husband. My husband is someone who understands English a lot, right? And can break down intentions from a single sentence. So if I say something, he'll say, "Oh, so this is what you're saying." I'm like, "No, that's not what I mean." He said, "But from what you said, from this sentence, this is exactly what you mean." And I'm like, "No, now." Now, that back and forth can happen between us because he knows that that's not what I mean. But in conveying it, that's what it's sounding like. And so he will correct me. I will make the adjustment, then re-say what he has said. But in this context, when you are in a state where you feel your boss is stigmatizing you, especially when he's not, chances are when you are speaking back, some of those negative emotions you feel will filter in through the words you speak, right? And that can also aggravate the situation. And you'll notice that I'm not even talking about the boss's response. I'm talking about our own responses because it's what we do that we can control. We can't control the other person's behavior. We can control how we behave, irrespective of the other person's behavior. And then the fifth is to practice your leadership skills. You're in some organizations where you have to begin the mastery of self leadership. Very important because, and all of these things I'm saying because I'm saying from a place of assuming that this is not a toxic environment we're talking about. If it's a toxic environment we're talking about, it's going to be an entirely different conversation. This is just us speaking that this is a normal organization, and this boss just has a traditional mindset and doesn't even realize that this is the way he's coming off to his employees, right? So, because apart from toxic organizations that are now a thing, this particular situation I'm describing is also something that happens where there's just that miscommunication. So, it will not be wise to just quit without a backup plan over something that can be managed, curtailed. Yeah. So practice leadership. And the final is if the boss is a bully, don't even be intimidated at all. stand tall and never cower. If there's something bullies thrive on, is seeing you broken, right? Seeing that when you're bullied, you shut down, you clam shut, you're afraid, they feast on it. But when a bully finds someone who can stand up to him or her, they back down. You find that they don't intimidate that person anymore. So if this is a bullying boss, don't be intimidated. Be bold enough to ask questions. You're asking me to do something for you at 4 a.m. I'm so sorry, sir. I will not be able to consistently do this at 4 a.m. However, if this is something urgent, I can do this, like that. Yesterday, Benny said something very important that for weekends, for example, she makes sure that she puts her work phone on silent so that it really doesn't matter who calls or what the assignment is. She won't even see it. And when you do that consistently, everybody begins to get the message that this person is not available at so and so hours. When I was working in a toxic environment, this was something that used to happen to me a lot. My boss would give me an assignment to do or to execute within 24 hours. It was a management consulting firm. And at 1, 2 a.m., when I'm probably rounding off, I'll just get a call from him. He'll be like, hey, Topper, you're still awake? My mind, I'm like, is it not you that give me work to do? I'll say yes, sir. You say, okay, that thing I asked you to work on. Don't worry again. Let's do it this way. So all of my efforts cancelled. At 2 a.m., I will just start preparing a brand new proposal or whatever task it is he's asking me to do. And it was really, really beginning to affect me. The very first day I stood up to him to say, oh, I'm sorry, sir, I can't do it. I need to rest. He was really shocked and he didn't think I would pull through with doing that. But the day I pulled through, he called, I didn't pick, put it on silent, came to the office at 8 a.m. He was asking, I called you. He didn't pick up. I'm like, oh, most likely I was resting since work resumes at 8. And that was the last time he ever called me at the wee hours of the morning to give me cap. I wasn't sacked because I knew my worth. I wasn't stuck, right? So don't be intimidated by a bully. And so that would be the end of this conversation about the woman and her relationship. I will stop recording now so that we can go to question answer. Let me stop